Network is the Motorcycle Action Group's monthly activist newsletter. I'm Colin Brown, and welcome to the MAG Network Readout. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Network Readout for October of 2025. Yes, we're into October, and it's woolly jumper season again. Over the last month there's been a fair amount of activity within MAG, and certainly since its return to Parliament, the new government has had a few how shall we put it, instabilities, shall we say. A reshuffle, minor reshuffle, followed by a major reshuffle, and there's an awful lot of activity that's gone on. Now, whilst the vast majority of people were looking at the main headlines for Secretaries of State for Foreign Policy and Home Office and things like that, there were some minor changes happening at the Department for Transport. Obviously, those are the ministers that we probably have the most contact with. Lillian Greenwood, who was the Minister for the Future of Roads, was moved to be a Cabinet Whip, moved into a different department, and she was replaced by a young man by the name of 𝐮𝐻𝐽𝐿. Now, we had assumed that he would just be taking over her role, but for a few days there was no definition as to what the ministerial responsibilities would be, so we were left a little bit in the dark. Now, I then went on holiday, and whilst I was on holiday, it appears that Lillian Greenwood was actually reappointed back to the DFT. I came back from my holiday, there was no explanation as to which roles each of the ministers were going to take, so it was a period of some considerable confusion. Now, I'm happy to say that just the day before I'm recording this, the government does now appear to have published the actual responsibilities for the junior ministers, so I shall put those up on the screen for you. But basically, we've got 4 junior ministers at the Department for Transport. Lord Hendy of Richmond Hill, he's the Minister for Rail, but he also covers London and TfL. Simon Lightwood is now classed as the Minister for Roads and Buses, so he's dealing with roads, buses, accessibility, automated vehicles and motoring agencies. Then we've got Lillian Greenwood back after her 9 days out of the office, but she's back with a different role. She's now dealing with local transport, which covers local transport, active travel, violence against women and girls, taxis, private hire vehicles and road safety. And then, of course, we've got 𝐮𝐻𝐽𝐿, who hasn't been pushed out. He's still there. He's the Minister for Aviation, Maritime and Decarbonisation. So he's covering aviation and airport expansion, maritime, decarbonisation and electric vehicles, freight and borders and security. None of these ministers has specific responsibility for motorcycling, but they all have roles. Each and every one of those 4 junior ministers has a role that overlaps with us. So we will be engaging with all 4 of those junior ministers going forward. Although, to be fair, we're now into party conference season, and you may well have spotted that there seems to be some question mark over whether or not there's going to be a leadership challenge in the Labour Party. Maybe we're heading towards yet another cabinet reshuffle, maybe even a new Prime Minister at some point in the not too distant future. So we're going to let the dust settle on the party conference season first before we try contacting any of these ministers, because we want to make sure that we address the letter to the right minister. Bus lanes. Obviously, we were campaigning hard for the petition to get the national policy change for default access to bus lanes during August. The petition closed. Sadly, we only managed to get to 27,090 signatures. Clearly not enough to get us to the 100,000 that we needed for the parliamentary debate. So you could argue that was an unsuccessful campaign, but MAG being MAG, we're not going to be throwing in the towel anytime soon, and I can assure you that I am still campaigning for bus lane access. To that end, I've already spoken to the Shadow Transport Secretary, I've spoken to the Mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and I've spoken to a local here in Worcestershire, a transport portfolio holder, about getting motorcycle access in the bus lanes here in Worcestershire. So this work can continue, it should continue, and I would encourage you, if you live in an area that doesn't have access to the bus lanes, assuming there's bus lanes in your area, please do get onto your local council or local authority and start pushing for it. We can get to universal access for motorcycles in bus lanes, despite the fact that the government can't see common sense at this point in time. Automated vehicle safety standards were something that I was putting in a large amount of time during the course of August. There were actually 3 separate consultations. We've put formal responses back to the government on all 3 of those consultations, and we're now in a position where we're waiting for the outcome to see whether or not they actually take any notice of what we said in those responses. Welcoming roads. Now, this again was another area where I think I mentioned it last month that we were going to be launching these 3 papers. This was provoked in some respects by the paper that was put out by a London Assembly member suggesting that a road safety policy should be charging motorcycles in a congestion charging zone in London. We thought we would do some papers that actually laid out some full detail about welcoming roads, what it would look like if you actually used a welcoming roads approach to doing road safety. So there were 3 papers that I put together. Now, don't get me wrong, these 3 papers are a culmination of about 4 years' work looking at what we should do, how we would do it, and how it would all fit together. So this is culmination of a lot of work that's been going on over the past 4 years since we initially launched Welcoming Roads as a program. The papers, I've already shared them. Obviously they've gone into the DFT. Naturally we had to mark it for to whom it may concern because we wasn't too sure who should be looking at this during the reshuffles. I've obviously presented it to the Shadow Transport Secretary when I met him later in the month. It's gone through to the Metro Mayors, it's gone through to TfL. There was a separate paper for TfL, there were 2 papers for the Department for Transport. It's all relevant to all levels of government. The reason why there's 2 for the DFT is one is the actual national policy, the other one is an implementation policy which points out the fact that different levels of government have different areas of responsibility. So there's no point arguing to a local councillor about changing motorcycle licensing because it's the Department for Transport that has the authority to change that. So that's second paper that was aimed at the DFT was an implementation strategy that makes it clear where the responsibilities and the capabilities lie. So all these papers are relevant at all levels, and I would encourage you to share them. As I say, the TfL one I've already used to good effect in a meeting with TfL looking at their Vision Zero Action Plan 2, the thing that kicked this all off. Yes, it did enable me to make some points that I think did actually land. So these are worthwhile papers. Now, you may find them a little bit dense and hard to understand if you try reading them. Don't worry too much about it. Share it with the politicians, share it with the policymakers. If they have questions and they want things explaining, don't feel that you need to explain it. Get them to come back to Mag Central, come back to me, and we will answer any questions that they've got and give them full explanation to help them understand what it is that we're trying to put across with these policy papers. Any question is a good question, and we encourage as many questions as possible. So yes, don't be afraid, don't worry if you don't fully understand what it says in these papers. It is quite lengthy, it is in, how can we put it, bureaucratic speech, shall we say. It's aimed at those policymakers, not at you as a rider. So what we want to do is make sure that we get these policy papers put in front of the policymakers so that they understand what we're saying, we're speaking their language, and if they need it explaining, they can come back to us. One thing that I do want to cover, it may seem that with recent meetings that we're being anything other than apolitical, because obviously I've met a Conservative Shadow Transport Minister, I've met a Conservative Metro Mayor. It may look like we're only speaking to one side of the political divide, shall we say. It may look like we're only speaking to one party. That is absolutely not the case. So the meeting with the Shadow Transport Secretary happened as a result of the briefing paper that we put out on Ride to Work Day. Now, this briefing policy paper did go out to every one of the 650 MPs. That is the only meeting so far that has resulted from it. I do have one more meeting that is scheduled at the back end of October with a Labour MP, but if we're not speaking to the politicians of the colour that you favour, speak to those politicians and ask them to reach out to us. The reality is we have seen reports of a couple of MPs claiming that they've reached out to MAG and asked for meetings. I can assure you we haven't received those, so if you are receiving that message from your local MP, try suggesting that they try again. We will speak to any of them, All they've got to do is open the door to us and let us through. Again, when we spoke to the Metro Mayor for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, he is a Conservative, yes, the same as the Shadow Transport Secretary. But again, we did engage with all the candidates from all the parties during the elections of the Metro Mayors, and we did engage with all of the successfully elected Metro Mayors. So despite the fact that he was the only Conservative Metro Mayor, he is not the only Metro Mayor that we approached asking for meetings. He is the only one that actually followed through. So again, if you have a new Metro Mayor in your area and you want us to be speaking to that particular one, contact their office, ask them to reach out to MAG, ask them to invite us to a meeting. That's the way that we make this work. Everybody needs to be pushing for them to actually engage with us. Forthcoming opportunities, obviously, as I said, I've met with TfL for their Vision Zero action plan. That is an ongoing project. Now, frustratingly, there's a lot of stuff that was discussed in that meeting I'm not allowed to report on until they actually publish their Vision Zero action plan. But I will say that there's a little bit of hope there if I've done the job right, shall we say. Again, I'm hoping for more meetings with Transport Scotland, which I'm hoping is going to lead somewhere. I've had meetings with them, and hopefully there'll be some positive news coming out of that, though I can't say anything just yet. I met with Martin Boyd over in Northern Ireland. We had the presentation to the British Parking Association. Again, there's things on the boil from that which could be bearing fruit in the future. So we've got quite a few irons in the fire, even though I'm not able to report on a final outcome on any of that stuff just yet. During October, I've got the DFT Road Safety Comms Panel meeting in early October. I shall be looking to attend the Highways UK show at the NEC during mid-October, which is a good opportunity for networking with senior people in positions that can make decisions when it comes to road repairs, fixing potholes, developing the road network, all that kind of stuff. That's the place to be to do the networking, so I intend going to that. And then, as I say, I've got actually 2 MP meetings in Westminster towards the end of October. One with a Labour MP to talk about the Right to Work Day briefing. The second one, strangely, I'm not too sure what it is I'm going to talk to him about. This is an MP who has put a number of parliamentary questions through relating to motorcycling. Hasn't made it clear why he's been asking these specific detailed questions. I reached out to him and asked him what it was his interest is and whether or not we would be able to help. He's invited me to a meeting, but he's yet to explain what it is, what he's looking at, if there's a problem he's trying to solve, if there's something he's campaigning for. Not sure what that is, but I shall find out when I go down to meet him. So yes, I'm intrigued, and we will see what happens. So that's it for this month. I hope that you'll find plenty to keep you occupied. As I say, please do share the Welcoming Roads papers with your local politicians. Keep throwing the mud. As I always say, if you throw enough mud, some of it will stick. And I would advise you to watch the recent video that I did talking to Sarah Poole, a perfect example of an individual MAG member who wrote and ended up getting a meeting with senior DFT officials, which I supported her at. So yes, not every letter brings a result, but sometimes one of them will get through. If you throw enough mud at that wall, some of it is going to stick. So please do try and get that done. Now, I'm recording this the day before the AGC, so I would say I look forward to seeing you at the AGC. Obviously, you're not going to be seeing this video until after the AGC, so hello and good to see you again. If I did meet you at the AGC, I can't understand how these things work. This is YouTube. I record the video, it goes out later, and somebody else does it. We will have various links around the place. I don't know how all that works either, but it will be done. And hopefully you can be a more effective MAG lobbyist by following some of the information and suggestions that we put out there. Good to speak to you all, and I'll see you again next month.